He went on to describe a disturbing moment in 2016 when he was shown a pitch deck for a new app designed by one of Diddy's business associates. The app's concept? To help talent connect with producers directly. On the surface, it seemed like a tool for empowerment. But then he turned the page. There was a whole section, Ashton said, about background checks, personality profiling, stuff that made me really uncomfortable. He passed on the investment, but the fact that it was even pitched to him spoke volumes. What was becoming clear now was that this wasn't just a story about wild parties or personal regrets. It was an entire ecosystem, a carefully constructed infrastructure that blurred the boundaries between entertainment, data collection, and something far more sinister. And in the middle of it all were names you'd see on magazine covers, holding awards on stage. But behind those glamorous photos, they were cashing checks, signed in silence. Over time, Ashton's inner circle began to shrink. The new Rat Pack that had once dominated red carpets and dominated headlines started to crack, not from scandal alone, but from the pressure of control. It became clear, Ashton said, that in this Hollywood fraternity, loyalty had a price, and betrayal had consequences. After 2014, things shifted. Danny Masterson became increasingly paranoid. Wilmer Valderrama, once inseparable from the group, began distancing himself, and Ashton, he started hearing things. Rumors that didn't come from tabloids or social media, but from close friends who had once been part of the same inner circle. He wasn't just referencing casual gossip. These whispers carried the weight of fear. His friends stopped coming to anything, he recalled. We all thought he was just burned out. Then one day he called me, and he said, "You know too much, get out." Ashton said that after he started declining invitations, refusing to show up at certain events, ignoring investment pitches, skipping dinners, he noticed the shift almost immediately. Projects that had been approved were suddenly canceled. Deals that once came easily were now stalling. Certain executives once he'd worked with for years just stopped calling. It felt like I was being quietly frozen out, he said. Not publicly humiliated, not confronted, just erased. He described a haunting encounter in early 2017. It was at a charity gala. Diddy was there. He walked up to Ashton, smiling, arms open, and hugged him warmly, as if nothing had ever changed. Then, in a low voice, Diddy leaned in and said, "You should be careful about what you don't remember." That line stuck with me. Ashton's voice lowered as he repeated the phrase. It echoed in the courtroom like a quiet confession. Shortly after that conversation, Ashton said, an unmarked envelope appeared at his office. No return address, no note inside, just a USB drive. He plugged it in. What he saw was footage from a party in 2012. Nothing overtly illegal, but it was compromising, embarrassing. The kind of video that could easily be taken out of context and weaponized. I got the message, he said. No names were spoken, no threats were made, but the implication was clear. From that point on, fear became a silent advisor in his life. It began shaping his choices. I didn't speak up. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, he did what many do in the face of quiet intimidation. He tried to back away, slowly, quietly, as if hoping his absence would go unnoticed. But it never worked. Someone always noticed, Ashton admitted. Every time I pulled away, something would happen. A tabloid leak, a hacked email, a legal threat out of nowhere. Each incident forced him into damage control mode, scrambling to protect his name, his brand, and most of all, his family. But beneath those public battles, there was a deeper one that tormented him, the fight with his own conscience. He recalled one particular night in 2018. A close friend called him out of the blue, warning him that a civil suit was about to be filed against one of the former Rat Pack members. "Don't worry," they said. "We'll handle it. Don't let it get to you." That's when something shifted in Ashton's mind. That was the moment I realized this wasn't friendship anymore, this was damage control. He began pulling away more decisively, cutting ties with former collaborators, quietly renewing funds, revising business agreements, renegotiating contracts. But even as he tried to untangle himself, the past clung to him. It followed him in subtle ways. Business associates would still mention Diddy in glowing terms. Tech founders would drop cryptic hints about undisclosed funding sources. And all Ashton could do was smile and nod, pretending he didn't hear the subtext. "I felt like I was being followed by a shadow I couldn't shake," he said. "And the worst part was, I helped build it." By the time 2020 arrived, Ashton Kutcher had taken every step imaginable to polish his public image. His investments were reframed as socially responsible ventures. His media appearances emphasized family values and philanthropy. His social feeds projected peace, stability, control. But beneath the glossy surface, he was running from a past that refused to be buried. And he wasn't the only one. The entire entertainment world was shifting. The pandemic forced celebrities into isolation. People began asking harder questions. Scandals, once buried by PR machines, started to rise. And then Diddy's name, once whispered in private, was being shouted from every headline. "When I heard about the first raid," Ashton said, "I wasn't surprised. I was relieved." But the relief was short-lived. Soon came the subpoenas, the relentless headlines. Social media posts resurfaced images long forgotten, some of them hauntingly familiar. Kutcher's name reappeared in the chaos, and this time, no PR team could contain the fallout. He described the day federal agents knocked on the door of one of his business properties. They carried a warrant. They wanted access to archived footage, correspondence, travel records. I gave them everything. He then explained why he had remained publicly silent during the storm that followed. It wasn't just legal fear. It was the realization of how deep the roots went. Who else might get hurt if he spoke? How far could the consequences reach? But the most devastating blow came in 2023. Footage surfaced from a party he co-hosted with Diddy in the Hamptons years earlier. It wasn't explicit, but it showed young influencers being ushered by handlers into off-limits areas. And on the video, Ashton's voice could be heard saying one line, "Just keep them calm until we start." That sentence went viral. It eclipsed every defense, every press statement, and everything changed. "That wasn't what it looked like," Ashton explained in court. "We were running a branding shoot, or at least that's what I thought. That's what I was told." But public perception doesn't care about explanations, not when the images are already burned into people's minds. And for a man whose identity was built on charm, trust, and likability, the hit was devastating. He lost major endorsements. Tech partners quietly withdrew their backing. Venture funds removed him from board positions without comment. And Mila, his wife, was reportedly furious. "He begged me to walk away years ago," Ashton said, voice shaking slightly. "I didn't listen." Then came the personal toll. Ashton described how his children began asking questions. Why were there strangers yelling outside their home? Why were news vans parked on their street? "I had to explain things I couldn't even explain to myself," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. In the end, it didn't collapse all at once. It ended not with a bang, but with a crumbling. A Hollywood A-listener, once seen as untouchable, now reduced to watching his empire fall, brick by brick. Not because of what he did, but because of what he refused to see, and worse, what he refused to stop. As Ashton Kutcher continued, his voice dropped, his tone no longer defensive but reflective, almost hollow. The courtroom felt the change immediately. Everyone knew where the conversation was heading. It turned to someone he had once called a brother, Danny Masterson. There was no need for dramatic buildup. The tension in the room spoke for itself. No one present had forgotten Masterson's sense. Convicted, sentenced, publicly disgraced. But what no one had heard until now was just how deeply embedded he had been in this elite circle, how far the influence reached, and how many layers were involved in protecting him. And more startlingly, how Ashton Kutcher himself was more entwined than he'd ever previously admitted. "We came up together," Ashton began slowly. "We shared everything, work, parties, even investors." He described the years filming That 70s Show, revealing that what went on offset was more important than what appeared on screen. Behind the scenes, it was never just acting, it was networking. Danny was connected through Scientology, Ashton through tech and venture capital, Diddy brought the music, the fashion, the nightlife, and at the very center, they merged their power, weaving it into a tight-knit web. A system built not just to grow influence, but to suppress dissent. "What people don't understand," Ashton said, "is how that power operated behind the curtain." When Danny was first accused, the legal defense wasn't the only mechanism activated. Favors were pulled, connections leveraged, support came in from every corner of the industry. "I watched it happen," he confessed. He recalled one particularly unsettling night in 2017. Netflix was preparing to drop Masterson from the ranch, but just before that news broke, there was a private dinner held in the Hollywood Hills. Attendees? Executives, producers, a few familiar artists, and, chillingly, one of Diddy's lawyers. The topic wasn't innocence, it was containment. The conversation revolved not around truth, but strategy. How to control the narrative, how to keep it quiet. Then came the documents. The prosecution presented email threads between Kutcher and his PR team where he offered to help manage optics on Danny's behalf. "I thought I was helping a friend," Ashton said. "But I didn't realize I was helping bury the truth." Then came more. A 2018 internal memo from a PR firm Kutcher had retained was shown to the court. It outlined a strategy to flood the internet with positive headlines, stories involving Ashton, Diddy, and Masterson. The campaign included celebrity endorsements, red carpet appearances, and well-timed charitable donations to women's organizations, all coordinated around key moments in the case. "I was scared of what would happen if the public turned on us," Ashton admitted. "So I became part of the distraction machine." He paused, then dropped one of the most unsettling revelations yet. There was a call in 2019. Danny was panicking. He said if everything fell apart, he'd take people with him. When Ashton asked who he met, Masterson simply said, "You know who signs the checks." Ashton didn't ask for clarification. He didn't need to. Everyone in that circle knew exactly what that meant, and now so did the courtroom. By this point, it was clear Ashton Kutcher hadn't just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He had been close enough to the core to see how it all operated, the gears, the deals, the silencing tactics. And he had, for years, stayed quiet. Until now, he began revealing details about what they called the cleanup crew. It wasn't one group, he explained, it was a system, a strategy. There were fixers, chauffeurs, paramedics, PR managers, lawyers. "You'd walk into a mess at night," Ashton said, "and by morning it was like nothing ever happened. Everything would be sanitized, stories would disappear, rooms would be repainted, people would be paid, sometimes memories erased." He recounted a chilling example, an event overseas in 2015. A female guest experienced a medical emergency during a private party. A response team arrived within minutes, removed her quietly, and by dawn, the room where it happened had been fully remodeled. "I saw the blueprint," Ashton said. "They covered the entire wall in mirrored glass, like it never happened." He went on to explain how silence was purchased through tears. Some were paid hush money, others were given job opportunities or casting roles. And those who asked too many questions? They disappeared from invite lists just like that. Then came financial records. Presented in court were documents showing Kutcher had authorized payments through one of his LLCs to a media consultant. That consultant had also been involved in Diddy's fashion campaign Damage Control during the same time frame. When asked why he went along with it, Ashton's reply was heartbreakingly simple. "Because I didn't know how to escape." By 2021, he said, he began the process of disappearing from them. He cut ties with Diddy's associates, shut down dormant companies, deleted old shared drives and personal photo archives dating back over a decade. But it wasn't enough. "You ever tried deleting a part of your life?" he asked the court. "The problem is, someone else always has a copy." He spoke of a chilling message his wife Mila Kunis received in early 2022, a photo of her and their children. Attached was a quote from a contract she had never seen. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder, even if you leave the party doesn't leave you. And then came the reason he was finally telling all of this. "Because I got tired of erasing myself," Ashton said. "Because the longer I stayed quiet, the more I became one of them." He paused, a long silence. Then he looked up. It was as if he finally understood what Part 9 of this trial really meant, not just for himself, but for everyone still hiding behind the facade. "This isn't about saving face," he said. "This is about saving whatever part of myself I still recognize." The judge asked him one final question. "If given the chance, would you go back and change anything?" "I would have walked away," Ashton said, no hesitation. "Back in 2005, the first time I saw the door close behind me at one of those parties, I should have left. But I didn't. I stayed. I played along. I smiled on carpets and pitched apps while people were getting hurt behind the scenes." He admitted he had recently sent letters to some of the victims, not asking for forgiveness, just trying to say something he hadn't been able to say until now. "You see it now, all of it." Then Ashton turned to the judge. "Your Honor," he said, "if there's anything this court needs, emails, records, names, I won't fight it. I've done enough fighting for the wrong people." A hush swept across the courtroom. Even Diddy didn't flinch. Because in that moment, the room wasn't full of celebrities or moguls. It was full of the echoes of what they all tried to bury. And outside, the world was still watching. Whether you saw Ashton Kutcher as a man seeking redemption, or just another guilty figure in designer armor, one thing had become impossible to deny. The curtain was finally being pulled on the myths of fame. And what stood behind it was far uglier than anyone had wanted to admit.